Let's get into it now. A spoiler-free movie review of Roofman, or maybe Roofman, depending on how you want to say it, starring Channing Tatum. This is low-key one of my favorite movies of the year. I found it so endearing and so entertaining. It's based on a true story. A guy named Jeffrey Manchester, who I believe is a very complex individual. I think this movie set out to make a statement on how the system can fail people, because Jeffrey is ex-military and he is a guy who robbed 45 McDonald's. And you might say, how could anybody have any redeeming qualities who has robbed 45 McDonald's? This movie will change your perspective on him, because if I just watched a news story about him, which this happened in the early 2000s, the movie takes place in 2004, I don't really remember it. But now, if this were to happen in 2025, I would think this guy is a criminal, get him off the streets. That's a lot of robbing. That's a lot of burglarizing. And I think it shows how the system can fail some people. I don't believe Jeffrey Manchester was an inherently bad person. And again, I just watched a movie about him. They could make me feel a certain type of way about him. He could be more awful in real life, but I don't think they would have told the movie in this way and took that big of a creative liberty, because what you even see in the trailer is Channing Tatum after he has cut a hole in the roof of this McDonald's, because he is a very observant individual and he realized, man, they are doing these deposits at the same time every day at every single McDonald's. What if I just come in before they do it? I put the entire working crew in the freezer, and then I take all the money and I call the cops. And you see him, even in the trailer, give his jacket to the manager of the McDonald's because he did not want him to be cold in that freezer, and the manager forgot his jacket. And I think it is those redeeming qualities about Jeffrey that have you rooting for him, because he does do bad things. He does commit crimes. Even though this movie is based on a true story, I won't tell you how it ends, because I think given the context, you want to kind of form the idea in your head of what exactly is going to happen to his character. The only thing I'll say is, obviously, if they made a movie about him, you kind of have to assume what happens to his character, but maybe you don't. But I won't get into that. But this movie comes to us from director Derek Cianfrance. And Derek did another one of my favorite movies of the 2010s, The Place Beyond the Pines, starring Ryan Gosling. And I think what Derek does so well is showing you individuals who feel like they've been backed into a corner, society has really knocked them down, and feel like they have no other choice but to commit crimes in order to make money, in order to provide for their family, because that is what Ryan Gosling's character does in that movie. He starts robbing banks, and he realizes he is really good at robbing banks, and even his character doesn't want to see anybody get hurt, but if you keep doing it over and over again, it can only lead to more bad things. But I don't believe Ryan Gosling's character in that movie set out to hurt or harm anybody. This was the only way he knew how to make money. And I think that is the same case we have here with Channing Tatum's character, where he got out of the military, has been given all these tools on how to repel, how to break into places, how to take people out, how to protect yourself, essentially how to break into places, and in his case, how to live in a Toys R Us for 6 months. And if you give somebody all these tools to do these things while they are enlisted in the military, then they get done with the military and they come back to the United States, and you don't give them the tools to re-enter society. And in this case, Jeffrey Manchester couldn't make money. He had a family he was trying to provide for, and the only thing he was good at was committing crimes, using these skills that he was taught while in the military and now applying it to his life of crime. So for me, a big thing I took away from Roofman that I really wasn't expecting is how we need to treat people better who serve this country when they come back home, and we want them to just quickly assimilate back into civilian life, but we don't give them the resources. I felt the exact same way after watching Warfare earlier this year, where you see people go fight for us overseas, witness the most heinous things, and then come back here and are just expected to be normal. We have to treat them better. Jeffrey was simply doing what he was good at with the tools he's been given, with the cards he's been dealt in life. And he obviously made some bad choices. He could have picked an entirely different career after coming back. But I also think he wasn't put in a place to succeed. And also, why I believe this character story works so well is because Channing Tatum is so charismatic. And I love the way he embodies this character, where Channing Tatum is a good mix of somebody who looks like he could have been in the military, has an incredible physique. In this movie in particular, because there are scenes of him bathing in this Toys R Us, and you just see him basically completely naked at one point. Not only can he do the physically demanding things, but he also has fantastic comedic timing. Channing Tatum isn't your average actor. He doesn't really have a vast history in acting before he got his start in the early 2000s. Before he got into acting, he was dancing in Miami. You've seen the movie Magic Mike. He was doing that type of thing. The dancing led to modeling. He ended up getting a role in a Ricky Martin music video, and that's where he was discovered and started doing acting. So he's not like this classically trained actor or had such an affinity for wanting to be a thespian that he went to school for it. And he didn't need to go to school, because there's one thing that you cannot learn in any acting school, and that is how to have charisma. And that is what Channing Tatum has. He oozes charisma and brings to life every character he portrays, because he is somebody that just draws you in because of the visuals, because of his strong jawline, his muscles. But it's not just having that. You also have to have that charisma to carry the viewer, to make them like you. And another thing he does really well that I don't think he gets enough credit for, not just the comedic timing, but he doesn't overact. He doesn't overcompensate trying to do all these extra things. When it comes to Channing Tatum, a lot of his mannerisms and his dialogue is very subtle, and I find that charming. And I think also working with Jonah Hill on 21 Jump Street, who Jonah Hill is a notorious guy who loves to do improv. He will do one scene a million different ways, maybe not a million, maybe not 100, maybe I'm exaggerating. Welcome to the podcast. But that is what Jonah Hill is known for. And I imagine working with a guy like Jonah Hill on a very funny movie, 21 Jump Street, which is probably my favorite, at least a top 3 Channing Tatum movie for me. And if you look at Channing Tatum's last 5 movies, he has a lot of variety. And I think that is why he is becoming an actor that I get more and more drawn to, because I don't know what kind of role he is going to take on next. Before Roofman, he did Blink Twice, which was more of a thriller. He played a bit more of a darker character. I liked him in that, even though I didn't like his character. Before that, he did Fly Me to the Moon, more of a rom-com. Him and Scarlett Johansson, I believe, was a perfect pairing. I love that movie. It wasn't anything special. And that is a hard thing right now. If you are not just a completely polarizing movie that makes headlines, because it's not just about making a good movie anymore. You have to have the marketing. You have to have the storylines outside of the film that people are following along. Fly Me to the Moon, if you put that movie out back in the late 90s or early 2000s, that would be a core rom-com, but it comes out at a time where that isn't a novel story to make anymore, even though I thought it was done really well. It just doesn't have that same impact, which is a hard pill for me to swallow, because it is movies like Fly Me to the Moon, it is movies like Roofman that I love, that I go and watch in the theater, and from when they start to when they end, I am completely entertained the entire time. But it isn't something as big as a Marvel movie. It isn't something that I feel you have to drive to the theater to see, which is another thing movies have to do right now, is create that sense of urgency that if you don't go see it opening weekend, you are missing out. Roofman isn't that type of movie, and if it can't be profitable, that makes me sad, because it could mean we see less and less of these films. It did not great opening weekend, and I'm here just fighting for this movie because it is a really good movie. But before that, he was in Deadpool and Wolverine, which he will return as Gambit. He's going to tone down the accent a little bit more. I love the fact that he is finally getting to play Gambit. He is somebody who has been a big advocate for a very long time trying to get Gambit on the big screen. And a lot of people hate on him saying, you don't look like Gambit, you're too big and bulky. I'd rather have somebody who doesn't exactly look like the character, at least in the comics, but want to play them so bad and want to do that character justice and be such a big fan and big nerd about it that it doesn't take me out of it, the fact that he doesn't look exactly like what we think Gambit should look like. And then before that, he did the final Magic Mike movie, Magic Mike's Last Dance. And before that, he did The Lost City with Sandra Bullock, which was a solid rom-com. A little bit cheesy, a little bit hokey, but I really like the two of them together. One thing I didn't love about Roofman was the fact that it made 2004 feel vintage, where you see some of the things on the shelves at the Toys R Us. There's like a Stitch toy. And I'm like, that is an inconsistency because I really pay attention to those things whenever you have a period piece, which is weird to talk about a movie from 2004 as a period piece. But I pay attention to the songs used in a movie because you have to be accurate. But all the things that were on the shelves, all the video games, all the references, where they were with technology at this point in 2004, which I also think was a big reason why he could actually get away with this, it all lined up. And that made me feel a little bit old. The fact that these things from a little over 20 years ago now feel vintage, I was like, oh my gosh, it's starting to set into me that you can set a movie in 2004 and it feel old, much like when we would watch new movies that came out in the mid 2000s and they took place in the 80s and it felt like an eternity ago. I am starting to feel that now, and that was the only thing I did not like about this experience. So what did we learn in this review? We need to treat our military better and give them resources when they come back to civilian life. Derek Cianfrance can humanize characters who have done bad things. If you haven't seen A Place Beyond the Pines, go watch Roofman and then go rent that on... You can't watch it on Netflix anymore, which was the last place I watched it, but you have to pay like that $3.50 rental fee. That is fantastic. Bradley Cooper is also in it, and that is the movie where Ryan Gosling met his wife. And we also learned that Channing Tatum, I don't think it's that big of a surprise. He's not a classically trained actor. Went from dancer to model to now one of the biggest names in Hollywood. But I just feel like overall, this is a real crowd pleaser because it has crime, it has thrills, it has romance, it has comedy, it has a little bit of nostalgia. There is a little something for everybody in this movie. But for Roofman, I give it 4 out of 5 Toys R Us.